I would like to welcome you to today's expert mini-briefing webinar, The Future of BPO. My name is David Goodstein, and I am a webinar coordinator for the Outsourcing Institute, and it is our pleasure to be the co-host of today's event with Proservatner. Before we begin today's session, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Rakesh Sangani. He's a partner in advisory for Proservartner. Before we also begin, I would like to say a few brief words about the Outsourcing Institute, and then we'll begin the presentation. The Outsourcing Institute is a professional association dedicated to providing independent best practice tools, roadshow events, and networking opportunities for all forms of outsourcing. Located at outsourcing.com, we have 70,000 members globally. We specialize in providing low-cost and no-cost alternatives for outsourcing buyers in need of RFP tools, vendor selection assistance, training, as well as general support and coaching. For those of you who are in the market in this space, we offer an array of very targeted sponsorships and promotional opportunities. Our sister company, CMS, provides recruiting services for those seeking to hire outsourced professionals experienced at buying, selling, managing, or consulting in this arena. Our contact information is at the bottom of the screen for those who have any questions. Without further ado, I will now turn it over to Rakesh Sangani, partner for Proservartner, and we will begin the presentation.
Thank you very much, David. Hello, everyone. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Rakesh Sangani. I'm a partner at a social enterprise advisory and research company called Proservartner. My background is that I've had the unique experience of being able to work on the buy side, the sell side, and the advisor side of BPO transactions. You know, the buy side with FTSE 100 companies such as Serco who are buying BPO deals, the advisor side with the likes of Deloitte and now Proservartner, and the sell side with Accenture, where I was sales and solutioning lead within their finance BPO business. So what that gives us and what that gives me is a unique insight into the methods and the tactics employed by each of the parties in BPO transactions. So today's session is going to be about the future of BPO, but before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about Proservartner as a company, because you may not have heard of us. We are a social enterprise consultancy which provides both research and advisory services. You'll see our 5 differentiators on the left-hand side of the slides, and I don't aim to bore you with those details, but what I do think is important is what we do in shared services and BPO. And that ranges from supporting strategy to implementing our benchmarking tool with experts to provide them with tailored solutions for finance and how that looks against best practice, for HR and what that looks like against best practice, and what they're doing in procurement against best practice methods. We're experts in operating in global business services models. We focus a lot on implementing and strategizing around hybrid models, and we do a lot of things within shared services and BPO around quality improvement, transition management, reviewing the right contracts, and what's becoming more and more important in this day and age is optimizing customer satisfaction. Our research arm has produced this piece that I'll go through today, which is on the future of BPO. So with no further ado, why don't we make a start on that? So in terms of this research, we interviewed representatives of each of the leading BPO companies and 80 multinational companies that had entered into the BPO arrangement to understand exactly what their views were around the future of BPO. We combined that with our own analysis to put together a paper on what the future of BPO looks like. This presentation today will summarize that paper in terms of the 6 key themes that we wanted to highlight. Those are the operating models in the future of BPO, competition within the marketplace, the pricing models and where BPO is moving to, location, people, and the impact of social media. Those are the 6 key things that we'll focus on today. In terms of operating models, our analysis on the future of BPO has illustrated that most leading organizations have a similar view around operating models, and that's focused on 3 key areas. One is the creation and the development of end-to-end processes. 64% of organizations in outsourcing deals are aiming to migrate away from their silos and towards a one-team model that operates across those silos. So for example, instead of having AP sat in the finance function and procurement sat in, purchasing or procurement sat in a procurement function, these have been replaced by P2P functions who operate as one team across both of those silos. So many organizations are realizing the benefit of having an end-to-end process model. Now, the second key trend and movement in our industry is around hybrid models. And this will continue as the years progress, because most organizations are realizing the benefit of combining shared services with the concept of outsourcing. And best-of-breed models involve fluid models where the services move from the business into a captive shared service center, with the transactional and more commoditized activities then being provided by the BPO provider. And there's a number of examples of that within the industry. The third key trend, and where we see the future of BPO moving towards, is around global business services. Our analysis showed that 48% of multinational organizations have either set up or are in the process of setting up a global business services model. Actually, 70% plan to have this set up effectively in the next 3 to 5 years. So there is an alignment in the industry, and that's one of the positives we took out of our research. There is a massive alignment around what the right operating model looks like within a shared services or a BPO arrangement. And that operating model combines end-to-end processes with hybrid models with the use of global business services as a governance framework. There's a realization that lift and shift does not provide the optimal long-term operating models, and organizations need to be able to adapt from that historic legacy lift and shift model into these key themes. The other area that we looked at as part of the research was around competition. And today we have intense competition for BPO services, and this will continue in the future. We see plenty of Accenture and IBM, Wipro and Infosys, TCS, Genpact and Capgemini on BPO transactions in this day and age. And we will continue to see those guys in the future. However, what we find in terms of the changing model and what we've seen in terms of the development of BPO is more niche providers being entered into the mix, whether they're niche around their industry vertical or whether they're niche around their specific capability. The likes of Cognizant, FirstSource, and Syntel are, to name a few, becoming increasingly popular for specific engagements. We're also seeing less and less of certain providers, and I think one which I really have some questions over whether they'll exist in the next few years in the future of BPO is HP, whose BPO arm is in a state of flux at the moment with the capability that they have through their Emphasis subsidiary that provides BPO services. There's a little bit of schizophrenia within that company because HP have BPO, Emphasis provide BPO, and they both compete against one another. We see that situation changing over 3 to 5 years, and one of those two being sold off. In terms of price competition, unsurprisingly, there is an increasing amount of price competition in the marketplace. and with wages increasing in most of these historic low-cost locations, the BPO providers have to be more and more smarter around either finding efficiencies quicker or leveraging cheaper locations. And those cheaper locations have made the BPO providers very much assess the capability in Tier 3 locations and in rural zones, especially in India, where Tier 3 locations and rural zones have been leveraged more and more to provide the low-cost services that the BPO providers need from a cost perspective to be competitive from a price perspective. Next, we come on to pricing models. Now, pricing models continue to evolve, and whilst a number of the providers are talking about outcome-based pricing, in the truest sense of the term, there's very little outcome-based pricing models in the marketplace. 14% of contracts have this component when we carried out our analysis. What we are seeing more and more of, though, are gain share arrangements. Gain share arrangements are where the provider will share on additional benefits they can accrue for the buyer of those services. And that can be additional cost reduction, that can be additional revenue, or what have you. And that's a component of business outcomes that they're helping to achieve for buy-side organizations. Now, this is different from business outcome-based pricing, and what we've noted is that the two are commonly confused in tenders. What we also see in terms of the optimal model in today's marketplace, and I don't see this changing for the next 3 to 5 years, is that organizations typically start off with an easy model for chargeback and an easy pricing model within their organization. And so they move from that easier pricing model to transactional-based pricing. So historically, we've seen FTE-based models existing from a pricing perspective, then migrating on to transactional-based pricing models over time. And that really is based on the customer demand, the alignment with the internal chargeback mechanism, and the maturity of the contract. In terms of location, our research illustrated that there were a number of regions that are outsourcing, and those continue to include Western Europe and North America, who remain the highest growth regions for outsourcing, and the most of demand is within those regions. However, we are seeing increased demand for domestic BPO, so onshore to onshore BPO, in countries such as India, China, Australia, and increasingly Latin America. We've seen also that with regards to delivery centers, the Philippines will become the undisputed lead for voice-based services, and overtaking India in this respect. Our research shows us that India will continue to lead the way in most of BPO, with the Philippines, China, and Malaysia aggressively challenging their locational superiority. With respect to emerging locations, as mentioned, onshoring is the new offshoring. And the UK and the US are becoming more and more price competitive given the improved availability of skills in those regions. We've also seen African locations growing in popularity. In the next few years, as we talk about the future of BPO, Africa will be a focal area for organizations trying to deliver global models. Not as popular in the future from a locational perspective are the likes of the Czech Republic, Egypt due to its political instability, and Mexico for similar risks and security concerns. And that's an important point. Political stability after what's happened in the Arab states has become #1 in terms of selection criteria for a number of organizations selecting which location to choose for where to put their captive shared services or where to have their outsource provider provide their services. Because the reality is, expensive service or not the lowest cost service is better than having no service at all. And in some of these regions that I've mentioned, Egypt and Mexico, there's been instances where companies have had to survive without any service. And as a result, what we're seeing in the market, and especially us as a consultancy advisory firm, is we're doing more and more business continuity planning than ever before. And if you do want to talk to me about that, then feel free to. The next theme we'll talk about is people. And within people, it's fair to say that there is currently in the BPO space, which is getting worse and worse, a war on talent. And so for the future of BPO, for a provider to be successful, they need to consider the following 5 things. They need to consider the brand that they have for employees. They need to consider the culture of the company and creating the feeling of belonging. They need to ensure that they live the values, that they openly communicate to staff, that they are transparent around communications, and that they share the views, the strategies, and the plans for the company. On top of that, there needs to be a focus on career development, and there has to be the opportunities for people to learn from others within the organization, from experts. And that will be the real differentiator for BPO providers. The reality is it's an aggressive space. There's high levels of attrition in current markets within the BPO space. And it is difficult to keep, to attract and retain talent within this industry. And don't let any provider tell you any different. They need to have very strong strategies around retention and attraction to ensure that the service quality is kept as high as it needs to be. With respect to social media, which is the next theme that we'll touch on, it's a very important area for BPO, to both today and in the future. Now, why is it important? Well, largely because of the age profile of people within the BPO space. The reality is the model for business process outsourcing has included replacing older individuals from the more Western countries with a younger age group with similar qualifications, if not better, but from low-cost locations. Now, that comes with it a threat around the attention to detail, given our Twitter generation that we come across today. And really social media is both a threat and an opportunity for BPO providers. The provider community see it very much as an opportunity because from a revenue generation perspective, they've managed to create a number of tooling tools that enable enable revenue generation within that BPO provider space, because they provide these services to clients that can enable clients to enhance their brand, monitor their campaigns, provide competitive analysis, and improve customer care. There's also the opportunity for BPO providers to continuously improve through using unsolicited feedback from social media as a mechanism to improve the services that they provide both to customers and, as we spoke of earlier, to their people as well. And then finally, in terms of fraud detection, social media can be monitored to both track or prevent fraud. So that's the end of this summary presentation on the future of BPO. If you want full details of the research paper and other pieces of thought leadership, what you can do is to join our Proservartner research portal for free until the end of 2012. The portal enables captive shared service centers or those buying outsourcing solutions to collaborate on specific research topics and it provides access to our thought leadership on things like chargeback mechanisms, global business services, analytics, and much, much more. For more details, please email Brad Cottle, who heads up our research capability, and thank you very much for your time. Just a little bit more